Howdy, howdy, and welcome back. We've got our final workshop Wednesday for 2022 about to happen. Can you believe that we are almost done? The end. Oh, I said 2022. It's actually 2021. So end of final workshop for 2021. Can you believe it is near the end? First, if this is your first workshop Wednesday, welcome. My name is Chris Mercer. I am the co-founder of a company called measurementmarketing.io, and with you found us through some of our podcasts and talks, maybe through some of the content that we have shared with some of the other platforms like CXL Institute, Digital Marketer, Measure Summit, or Social Media Examiner. Maybe you are already a member over at measurementmarketing.io. However you found us, we're happy that you're here. It's our job to help people like you learn how to use tools, basically learn how to measure, to improve a measurement culture that's hopefully in your own organization. And of course, we do that with something called the Measurement Marketing Academy. It is our flagship program. We'll talk more about that at the end of today's training. For this workshop, remember, just focus on one new thing, one new idea. We're actually going to go through 10 different strategies that you can start using for 2022. So just take on the one that you think is the most useful, the most actionable for you. Use that, rewatch this workshop, pick up another new one thing, and then take action on that. So one step at a time. Remember, baby steps, get good enough to get going, come back and make it better later. That is how we end up getting this stuff actually done and building skills versus just getting overloaded with a ton of new ideas. You don't need new ideas, you need new actions. So that's kind of our one thing step. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Strategy session. The top 10 goals to improve your measurement strategy in 2022. Technically, we're going to go through this one strategy at a time. I'm just going to go ahead and start right in. We're going to keep it nice and basic, just using slides since it's a strategy session. The first goal, I think strategy in this case, that most organizations really need to focus on is asking better questions. Now, this is something you might have heard about before, might even thought about before, like, oh, we actually ask better questions. You're going to get better answers, and you can actually take action now on those answers. And that is true. It is important to ask better questions. The secret is not to overcomplicate it. So remember, when it comes to your questions, you only ask two types of questions. There are the results questions and there are how questions. Most companies ask results questions, and that's it. Right? That's it. And that's why they're not asking what I quote, better questions, right? We want better questions, and better questions mean how questions. So a result question might be how many leads did we get, or how many sales did we make? What's our LTV? What's our average cart value, right? Any of that sort of stuff. Results questions, like what's the end of the customer journey and did we achieve what we wanted to achieve? Better questions, right? We want our better questions. Those are how questions. So how many people saw the offer? How many of those went to the cart? How many of those purchased for the average ticket, which created the revenue and the LTV and everything else? You have to know how you are successful, and you have to know how you are not successful. You need to know how your machinery is working. And that is where asking better questions comes into play. Because if you just make that one adjustment for 2022 and you vow to ask results questions, but also how questions, you will start to get better answers you can actually go ahead forth and take action on. Now, the second strategy that I would put in play for 2022, if you haven't already, think less about the numbers. I know it's kind of a weird for like a channel that's sort of focused on measurement. Measurement Marketing.io obviously is a company that's focused on measurement. Less numbers, more behaviors. Because behaviors are everything. It's not about the numbers. It really isn't. I mean, the numbers are a byproduct. It's how we measure stuff. Of course, we need to record this information in some way, shape, or form. But it's not about the numbers. It's about the behaviors that individuals are taking on your site. Lots of people know about things like LTV, and we should know average cart value and what my core conversion rate is, maybe what my abandonment rate is on a cart. Fine, it's important. And yes, it is. However, it is more important to be able to measure for the fact that somebody saw the page to begin with, stayed there more than 10 seconds, maybe clicked around product detail images. Did they even look at the place where there were reviews? Did they show some sort of behavior that they're actually investigating the offer? Are they playing around with the different variations that you have? That's so much more important to measure for on an offer page or on a product detail page, that sort of behavior, because then you really start to understand what the users are doing on the site and what they might be looking for. That can help you to optimize, right? So think, yes, you want to have the numbers for sure, but really measure for those behaviors so that you understand what actions the individuals, your users in this case, are taking on your site. Strategy number 3, measure if actionable. If it's not actionable, if whatever you're going to measure for is not actionable, quite literally meaning you don't know what action you're going to take, even if you get that number, don't worry about it. It's not worth measuring for in most cases. A popular example that we've talked about from a company years ago, we were first training them. We were doing a private guided training program for them and their team. And they were talking about setting up these UTM codes they were going to measure for which paragraph in an email that people were clicking on that brought them to the page, because you can definitely do that. But we asked them, like, what action are you going to take if you get a report that says paragraph number 3 is awesome? Like, what action will you actually take with that? And they realized very quickly there is no real action they can take with that. It's just sort of interesting to know, but interesting does not mean actionable. So always when you're setting up your measurement, only measure things where you can know what sort of action you're going to be able to take based upon what the answers are that you're getting back from your measurement. So always, always, always make sure it's actionable. Don't measure just in case one day you might need it, because that's how you end up with a company with tons of what they call dark data, which is the basically useless data that's being collected in databases and isn't useful for anything because it had no intention. There was no action that it was associated to. Only measure if something's actionable. And if somebody can't think of a reason why it's actionable, it's probably not worth measuring. All right, strategy number 4. Make your results tell a story. This is something I see again. It kind of ties into the question. It's almost like the flip side of the questions thing, where we want to ask better questions for strategy number 1. For strategy number 4, make your results tell a story. What that means is stop measuring, not just for the purchases or the leads or whatever the end step of your user journey is, but measure also for those how steps. So in measuremarketing.io, we teach this as ACE goals. You measure for awareness. You measure when they're aware of the customer journey or the user journey you want them to be on. We measure for when they complete that specific journey, and we measure for when they engage along the way. So ACE is ACE, and that's why we call them ACE conversions or ACE goals. So make sure your results are telling a story that you're measuring for these different stages, because it will light up your traffic and you start to actually see a story back there. It becomes a lot more useful, and you're able to get to actions a lot faster when you understand which traffic sources are better at creating which specific types of results. All right, strategy number 5, improve your UTM skills. Why? Because of strategy number 4. Because if you are measuring for results that are actually telling a story and you have this ACE method set up, your UTMs are so important. Now, UTMs, again, for those that are maybe just starting out, not quite sure what we're talking about, in Google Analytics, you can set up a parameter, you add them to the end of your URLs, and they basically tag in and tell Google Analytics where the traffic came from. So improving your UTM skills means, number 1, maybe you just found out a UTM was a thing, then you should Google that and try to start using them. If you are using them, you really got to make sure you're taking full advantage of them. Are you structuring them properly? They do need to be structured in a certain way in order to be the most useful. The other thing is using UTMs where you think, like, what's the stuff that's out there that we're not able to tag, or at least you don't think you are, but maybe you could. For example, this YouTube channel. If you're on our YouTube channel, you go to the description and you click on a short link. If you're interested in the academy or when creating a workshop, a Toolbox account, I should say. When you do that, those are short links that redirect to let Google Analytics know on our end, hey, you came from YouTube. It was social traffic. It was for the purposes of eventually, hopefully becoming an academy member. But we've done that with our YouTube channel. We've also done that with webinars. We've also done it when I'm speaking on stages. We do it when I am a guest on a podcast and people say, hey, how can they find out more about measuremarketing.io? We will set up little links that then go to the actual pages we want them to go to, but we use UTMs. So we can measure podcast traffic. We can measure live on stage speaking traffic. Now that that's starting to trickle back in toward the end of 2021, we can also measure, traditional, more like webinars, things that are typically not measurable by most people because they don't think to do it. So that's just a strategy to make sure you're improving UTM skills and that you are really maxing out UTMs, because the better you are at measuring traffic, the more easy it is to tie it to specific results. And if you're following strategy number 4, you're measuring results as a story. So that obviously is just going to connect the two dots together. So that's how those two work. Strategy number 6, measure only what you can use in a forecast. Now, this is another way of saying measure what's only actionable, but I think people have a different definition of actionable. So they think, things that we take action on. And that's true. So that's why we kept it in there. This one's kind of a level up from that. So this is only what you can use in a forecast. So for example, if somebody says, well, do you want to know how many people have spent 47 seconds on a page? I might want to know that if it's a specific behavior I'm trying to elicit, which means I'm measuring for that specific result, which I would set up as a goal or a conversion event or something like that. So I would set it up because that's actionable. But it's not particularly something that I would use in a forecast. What is something I would use in a forecast is the number of cart page views, the number of maybe people who are investigating a certain offer, the number of people who complete the user journey, because those are things that I can say, well, based upon the trends and patterns that I see coming through that have happened over the recent past, I can start to predict out our near future and say, well, if I have 100 people come into the page next week from Facebook, I will know, let's say roughly 8 to 12% of those will go to the cart, and 35 to 45% of those will complete the cart at this average ticket, which should generate this much revenue. In other words, I can use it in a forecast. And because I'm able to use that measurement in a forecast, it's going to naturally help me to optimize, because I can start to measure where in that forecast it might not be hitting the mark of where it needs to be. And I can see it, and I'll be able to go, oh, okay, this is where we need to put our effort, resources, and energy into this particular step as opposed to some other step. Strategy number 7, measure expectation. So what is that? When you optimize, when you go to optimize, there's something at measuremarketing.io we teach in our Win Your Optimization Strategy course, where we talk about this concept called expectation engine. That is every step, every single step has this. Every step is designed to match an expectation set by the previous step, whether that previous step was an ad or the page before or something like that. But it's designed to meet that expectation, and then it should transform the expectation and set up the user for the next step in the journey, whatever that journey happens to be. So a Facebook ad is designed to meet the expectation from them being on their news feed on Facebook, right? Because it's going to be probably an image or something like that, let's say on their desktop newsfeed as they're scrolling through. It's designed to meet the expectation that they're on a newsfeed. It's going to look like they're a newsfeed thing, but it's supposed to get attention. So you have a cool little image that gets attention. Well, now that you're interacting with that ad, it should be designed so that it actually sets the expectation for the next step. Ideally, that means leaving Facebook and going to the offer page, let's say as an example. So then the ad transforms the expectation, sets up the expectation for the next page, which in this case, hypothetical example, might be an offer page. That offer page should be matching the expectation that was set by the ad so that they stay on the page, which again, we can measure for that by, let's say, 10 seconds on the page. If they're not there in 10 seconds, that's because something was mismatched above the fold and didn't quite work. So we know to maybe adjust that part. But the point of this is you should be measuring the expectation. Measure, again, goes back to behaviors. You measure, did the headline and the lead copy that you have maybe above the fold, did that set the expectation to get them to engage with the copy or to engage with that VSL or to engage with the video that you had, right? The video sales letter or some other, multimedia that you might have in the pictures or the variations you might have if it's an e-commerce store. But you should be measuring for that expectation. Was the expectation set and was the expectation met, right? When you do that, when you start chaining that together, it's what we call expectation engine, because you get things firing on all 8 cylinders and it just feels like, wow, this marketing is really taken off. Why? Because you're setting the expectation properly, and every step that sets the expectation sends it to the next step, which meets the expectation, sets the expectation for the next step, which takes them further and further down the journey. And the more times that you can match that, the better your conversion rates will climb. So measure for expectation. Strategy number 8, follow the journey. Now, this one I am going to bring up a bit of a graphic just for those that are maybe new to our channel. This is what we mean when we talk about the journey, right? The measurement journey. There are really 3 stages to this. You've got the cave, you've got the valley, which is in the middle, and you've got the summit, which is the really complicated style stuff. Now, the cave, they are walking around in the cave, if you notice in this image. They're just starting out. They're just sort of lighting things up, and their job is to get out of the cave. If you are just starting out in the world of measurement, you are in the cave. You're just trying. If you've ever wondered to yourself, we're just trying to figure out what's working and what's not, that's a cave style question. It's a good question, but it's a cave style question. It shows that you're a beginner, you're learning the stuff, you're building your measurement muscles, and you're just starting to build measurement muscles. So that's a good thing, but you're in the cave. Now, what happens is a lot of times you go to these masterminds or you find a training or God forbid you Google something on the internet and like, what questions should we be asking or what are the metrics every e-commerce store owner should have? And then you see a million blog posts that talk about all these metrics and these fancy things that now you think you have to have because they said that. So now what's happening is a lot of times you end up looking at the summit. You're looking at somebody else's summit. Somebody else is really good about measurement. Somebody else can provide all of these numbers for themselves. But if you look in the summit, right in the upper right-hand corner of this image, they're not walking anymore. There's a helicopter. You need helicopters to go from mountain to mountain to mountain. Their implementation is a lot more complicated in those cases. So they can get answers to very complicated questions. You might not be able to. So if you're in the cave, don't build a helicopter. Because when you do, it's just frustrating for everybody. The helicopter's never going to work inside a cave. You're just going to have to take a thing apart anyway to get it out of the cave when you're ready. And it's just going to frustrate everybody. It's complicated and it keeps you in the cave. But I see that's the number one mistake most companies do is they say, we're not going to build our measurement muscle, but we want all the results that some other person or some other organization has that has measurement muscle. You cannot do that. You have to build measurement muscle on your team. You've got to build a measurement culture. And knowing what stage you're in is super important, because the sooner that you just accept you're in the cave and you learn the basics without trying to do anything advanced, just learn the basics, get the foundations down. Pop, you're out of the cave. Now you're in the valley of visibility. Now in the valley, in this middle part here, they're riding a bike, because riding a bike is better than walking. It gets you around a little bit faster. It's a little more complicated than walking. There's a lot more moving pieces back there. Might need some maintenance. You learn how to maintain a bike and how to move through the valley and how to steer a bike and everything else. Again, you're building measurement muscle so that eventually, if and when you need it, you can then move to the summit. At that point, you've got lots of muscles being built. You're ready to start working on a helicopter, some more advanced stuff. So that's where we talk about the 3 stages and making sure that you sort of understand the journey of where you are and accept that. Because the sooner that you do that, and the sooner you refocus the team, say maybe somebody does ask something super complicated. Maybe it's a client or a stakeholder or a boss or something like that that's coming down on you saying, we got to know this stuff. You're like, awesome, but we need more resources because we can't get those answers because we don't have measurement in our company. Those companies do. That's why they can answer those. So let's come up with a plan to get us out of the cave, through the valley, into the summit. And so that's the idea of the stages. So basically, know your journey, right? Use the journey, go through the journey. Just understand you're in the cave. You'll probably be in the valley for a long, long time. And you can be super successful. With most, I say 98% of what you're asking for probably will be in the valley. And then occasionally, large organizations or super complicated stuff, you can then start moving into the summit at that point when you need it, if and when you need it. All right, strategy number 9, use a system. So use a system. So what does that mean? That means measurement isn't just going to Google Analytics and like popping back in the reports. And maybe you've tried this. I know I did when I was first starting this whole thing out. I would go into analytics because I thought, well, I'm supposed to see something that's amazing back there. It's going to tell me what I could do to improve all the results. So I go back into Google Analytics and you sort of feel like you're splashing around in a bunch of strange reports that don't quite mean anything. And they seem to contradict sometimes each other, and you're not quite sure what's going on. And that's because you're not using a system. I was guilty of this too. This is how I know. So you need to use a system. Now, fortunately for you, we have a system that you can use. You can use ours, the Measurement Marketing Framework. You don't have to use ours, but most systems are going to follow along the lines of this. All systems are essentially the same. It's just a matter of how you actually interact with them to see if you get better results from them. But essentially, they all start with planning things out. Then you build things out, and then you actually use the stuff, right? What we call launch. So in our system, it's what we call the Measurement Marketing Framework. Marketers are typically marketing the blind. You want to get to a point where the marketers are marketing, I should say, is just reliably growing revenue and your profits. How does that happen? First, you plan. Ask the right questions. Collect the right information to make sure you get answers to those questions, and then think about the actions you're going to take ahead of time. Think about the actions you're going to take based upon the answers you get. You do that ahead of time. That's your main planning step. When you get through that, you've got a decent measurement plan in-house, you then start to build. This is where, of course, you make sure your results are being measured properly. In this case, we talked about that results story. You make sure that the traffic, that's where the UTMs come into play. Make sure you're using UTMs to tie results to traffic. And then eventually you set it up in a way, this is where you really do have to learn the individual tools that you're using. You use that tool in a way where it really truly connects the dots, and it does start to tell a story. If you've ever thought to yourself, man, Google Analytics should be much easier to use than this, and if only I knew how to read the reports, I would get better results from it. That's a half truth. You will get more results from Google Analytics knowing what the reports are, but the problem is Google Analytics, without any sort of actual customization, if you haven't gone in and customized your tool, which I would bet dollars to donuts that you probably haven't in most cases, at least if you're just starting out, you certainly haven't. When you go back there, if you don't have views, you don't have filters, you don't have your results goal set up, you don't have UTMs back there, you haven't looked at cross-domain tracking, you haven't done any custom dimensions or custom metrics. If none of that stuff is back there, then you have not customized your Google Analytics. So it's highly unlikely you're going to see a story that's back there. So you have to learn how to use these tools, and ideally other tools like Google Tag Manager, which makes a lot of that stuff a lot easier. You can start collecting all sorts of advanced information and behaviors that are happening on the pages. You tie it all together with Google Analytics in a way that does naturally tell a story. And it really does. It can be as simple as reading a kid's book. And I know that might sound weird for some of you going, I have been in analytics. It is not a kid's book, but it can be. You just have to learn how to read it. But before you can read a kid's book, it has to be organized properly. If I take a kid's book, I rip out the pages and I rip those up in a million pieces, smash them between the covers and give you that kid's book back, that kid's book is still going to be really hard to read. It's not impossible to read, because you're still a good reader. It's just a kid's book after all. But it is ripped up in a bunch of different pages. In other words, it's not been customized or organized in any real way. So it's really hard to see the story. You're going to have to take a while and organize everything for you to even get any idea of what that story is about. That's exactly what Google Analytics is like out of the box. You have to set measurement up. Right? You have to think measurement focused. You got to set up your measurement system so that it naturally tells you a story. And that's how you get through to this. Now, once you have that, now you, of course, you start to listen to everything, right? We listen to the conversation. We're going to come back to that in a second. Then you forecast based upon your benchmarks. So when you get your basic trends and patterns of what's working and what's not and how things are operating, you can start to forecast and say, well, if I, again, knowing that maybe 8 to 12% of the people who come to my offer page go to the cart page, or of the people who come to my product detail pages, typically 35 to 40% will add to cart, half of those start the checkout. And again, these are just example numbers, but they give you basic trends and patterns. You will see this. It will be eerie. In the beginning, it's kind of scary because you're like, wow, this is really, people are really predictable. Not individually. We're hard to predict individually. We're super easy to predict in bulk. And that's the idea of trends and patterns. So then you can start to forecast and start to say things like, well, here's how my Facebook traffic, I'm going to spend $1,000 next week. Here's what should happen to that $1,000 and what the results are I'm going to get from it. Here's exactly what the results should be. Number of people will see the page, click on the button to buy, go to the cart, start the checkout process, what the average ticket's going to be, everything. And you can measure against your forecast. That's how you optimize, which is the end part of this thing. So you measure and you might find out that of the $1,000 you spent, you thought you were going to get 1,000 clicks, you only got 500 clicks. So maybe it's optimization on the Facebook side of things or the traffic side. If it is that the traffic source, let's say Facebook, sent you 1,000 clicks, but only 2% went to the cart, well, maybe you've got a problem on your offer page that you can focus on and you can measure for that and improve it. But at least you know where to focus your effort and your energy. You know where to optimize. That's the trick. And then you focus on that spot because that's the thing that's most likely going to move the needle. And that's the measurement marketing framework in a nutshell. So when we say use a system, right, with strategy number 9 is using a system, this is it. You can use this one. You can use anything like it. Doesn't really matter. Just make sure that you're using something that is a system that you can use over and over again. Remember, this is not a one and done thing. You go through the framework. We've done it thousands and thousands of times. You should as well. With time, you certainly will, hopefully. And the idea is that every time you go through this, you gain more muscle. You get better and better. So at the rate that I personally am right now, I'm probably years ahead of where you are. I use the framework in in a different way than maybe you would because I have better muscles right now, right? But that's only because I've been using the framework over and over and over again. And each time I get a little bit better at it, and my measurement scale gets a little bit better, and the company's resources get a little bit better because we're using the framework. It's because we use a system that separates us out. So I want to make sure that we pass that along. And of course, if you need a framework or a system, start with this one, and then you can iterate it on your own if you want. But again, we've tested this over the years, and it works really well. So this is truthfully the one that we use in our own company, and you're more than welcome to take it as well. Strategy number 10, I mentioned we would come back to this because it is so important. We're going to mention it twice. Listen to the conversation. So in our framework, this is so important. We actually make a part of it as the launch step. It's like the first key to that launch step is you have to listen. We have to listen to the conversation. Remember, and this is the most important part about this, there is a conversation happening between the users and your website. And that conversation is happening regardless of whether or not you choose to listen to it. Just because you don't measure for it, just because you decide you don't need to listen to the conversation does not mean it's not happening. And it's just you missing out. It's you missing out. Imagine if you had a brick and mortar store, people would come into the store and you never talk to any of them. You never ask them how their day is going. You never say, how can I help you? You never say, what can I look for? What can I help you find? You just hope they figure out how to pull products off, go to the cart, somehow make it through your checkout process, and you don't care at all. You never think about that. Then I have a brick and mortar store, says the exact same stuff that yours does, only I listen to the conversation. I ask them how their day is going. I adjust my conversation. Turns out I realize they don't like a certain type of product that we have in because they don't need it. So I change my inventory. I change the flow. I help them check out. I do trial closes. I can really help them move. I can get more transactions per day. I'll get more money per transaction than you will because I'm listening to the conversation. And if you think brick and mortar, you're like, well, I would never ignore a customer coming into my store. I agree with you. I don't think you ever would. But we do it on websites all the time as digital marketers. We totally ignore the conversation. And how do you know if you're doing that? It's because you don't measure for it. At MeasureMarketing.io, we listen to the conversation. We want to know how the users are interacting with our site. We want to be able to get trends and patterns because we have certain expectations, in other words, forecasts that we have and how the site should be performing and how it's helping people through the customer journey. That's very important to us. And we got to make sure that the site is performing properly. So we measure to the conversation, right? We're listening to the conversation, and just make sure that when you're going to your measurement, if hopefully this does help your thinking. At our organization, at measurementmarketing.io, it is all about the conversation that the users are having with the various user journeys that exist, whether it's the academy journey or private guided training or certification or countless other products or services that we have, that we offer in our training. We are always have an expectation of what the conversation should be between the website and users, and we're listening to that conversation to make sure that it is. The second it goes off the rails, we will then work to optimize to improve the website experience, whether that's copy or design or interaction or something like that, some other element, to make sure the conversation gets better and improves. But we only know to do those steps because we are measuring for the conversation, because we very clearly see, oh, hey, here's where it's not quite working. Then we know where to marshal our effort and our resources so we can move the needle and move it quickly, so we can improve our own results faster, certainly faster than competitors or something like that. So that's the idea. And if you start measuring for the conversation, you start listening to the conversation, you start even having this word conversation in your own organization, like, hey, what's the conversation between that user and the offer page? What's the conversation between the user and the cart right now? Just asking that and talking about using the word conversation changes how people think about measurement. And you might even get some more resources on your team if that's what you need. Or maybe from a strategist perspective, you might actually start to invest more resources in your own measurement team, because you understand, like, oh, wow, this is really good. Like, there's a lot of cool things you can do with measurement. It's more than just knowing a few numbers. Measurement's so much bigger than that. So that is our final strategy. Listen to the conversation. It's happening whether you choose to listen or not. So you might as well. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Hopefully you got at least one new thing. Remember, the one thing is not necessarily some actionable thing you're going to take action on today, but it could be just a new way of thinking about something. Maybe it's the idea of asking better questions. What we talked about there is results and how questions. And probably you need to come up with more how questions. That's where most people are not really focused, and they forget that part. So could be that. It could be your results story. It could be the UTMs. Could be the conversation thing, right? But go through the strategies. You can watch this video over and over for as long as you want. It's why we keep them out here to help things out. It's just the idea of like, okay, here's something I can even maybe think a little differently. That's totally fine. Take action where you can. Come back, rewatch the workshop. When you have more measurement muscle, you'll hear something else in the workshop. You'll be like, that's my number one thing. All right. With that... Excuse me, I had to cough there. I apologize. It's the beauty of going live. With that, next week is a What's New, updates and features that are released in 2021, or technically December of 2021. As of this recording, it's December 29th. So we have a couple more days left in December. We're just going to let Google do whatever the last updates were that they had for Tag Manager Analytics, Data Studio, as we normally do. So our first What's New workshop for Workshop Wednesday of January will be What's New. If you want that, just subscribe to YouTube channel. We are now over 3,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. So subscribe. And of course, we love the comments. We love seeing positive comments, and suggestions you guys have is always good. Topics you want to hear about, put those in there. We're able to get through them. We can't always respond to all of them, so I apologize for that because we are taking care of the members in the Academy. We tend to focus our resources there. But we do see them, we read them, and it does help us. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, make sure you get notified, and it'll let you know when the new workshops are available. The other option you have is the Measurement Marketing Toolbox, what we call our Toolbox membership. It has the most recent Workshop Wednesday, which is what you're watching now. And it also has a bunch of tools back there. So sometimes like with the traffic tracking toolkit, that's how you can improve UTMs. Using the ACE goal planner that's back there for result story. We've got a split test optimization pipeline if you need to improve your optimizations. There's a whole system back there for forecasting revenue and results if you want to use that. So all of that stuff is back there. We give it completely free. So to get that, just go to measure.tips/WW, just enter name and email, send you out login information. You have access to everything. The other option is the Measurement Marketing Academy. This is the thing we talked about at the very beginning, is our flagship training program. It's a just-in-time learning platform, essentially is what this is, so that whatever you need is there. And we built it for this purpose, for the framework, to go help you through the framework over and over and over and over and over and over and over as you progress through the journey. So a really quick tour on what this looks like for those that have not seen it yet. When you come into the Academy, you basically have access to these 6 blocks that are coming through here. Our content is the traditional sort of what you might think are regular courses. This is what this is here. We have on-demand workshops. In addition to those, and we have the Toolbox, which is the resources that we have access to. Then we have support with the community. This is members helping members. And over here is the instructors, where you can reach directly out to instructors, send them videos and screenshots. They send you videos and screenshots back. And it's so much better than I lost my password kind of support. It's like concierge level support. So I wanted to show you what those look like. The Win courses section, this is it. They're organized by date. So we've got our new one coming up in January is going to be an update, I believe, of the Google Analytics. I thought it was going to be basics, but I think we just did that one recently. So I think this is, I take that back. It's going to be your measurement plan. That's what we're doing. So when your measurement plan is being updated. So we're going to have that done for January 2022. Got to start saying 2022 now. So we'll have that. But you can see here all the different workshops, courses, I should say, that are back here. These are traditional courses, the ones that you would sort of expect that are back here. So topics and lessons all broken down. We call them WIN courses because WIN stands for what I need. I am personally not a believer in buying a course that's got a million different videos to it because it's too much. And you don't need to know every single nook and cranny of Google Analytics to get meaningful action from it. You just need to know the stuff that you need to know to be able to get up and running, right? What you need, what I need, that's what you need. So that's what they call WIN courses. What I need, I just need to know the basics. I just need to know how to set it up. I just need to know the basics of Tag Manager, whatever. So we have all of them here. You can see them all listed by date. And then we typically do a new workshop or an update to an existing workshop every 4 to 6 weeks on average. It's kind of what it works out to. So those are there back there for you, traditional courses. The other thing that we have is the on-demand workshops. So that's what these look like. Of course, you have the Workshop Wednesday, the most recent one, but all the Academy members have theirs edited down into specific what we call student versions. So Academy tours like this are taken out of those, for example. They have Zoom effects in there. They're quite a bit shorter. And this is because not everybody watches these each week, right? You sort of need them sometimes when you need them. So you might skip a few workshops, come in as an Academy member and get caught up on all the what's news. Maybe we missed a few months of last what's news. You can go through the last 90 days very quickly, get caught up on what the latest and greatest was. Getting started topics. Maybe you want to get caught up on some of the getting started topics. Maybe you just want to type in something. So you might want to go, okay, I want to go find, something on goals as an example. And you can come through and say, okay, I'm trying to figure out something on goals. Well, now it goes through. There's the new workshop on troubleshooting goals is there, but there's also other goal workshops. There's lessons that talk about goals in Google Analytics and the WIN courses. So everything's searchable and everything's back there for you. So that's the WIN courses and the on-demand workshops. Then we talked about the Toolbox. Now remember, the Toolbox itself is back there for our members, right? It's back there for members, helping members. It's back there for the member resources that we've created to help our members, I should say. So we talked about the traffic tracking toolkit. There's the ASCO one, by the way. Traffic tracking toolkits down here. The power planners for forecasting. We've got the split test optimization pipeline somewhere around here, right there. Optimization pipeline. You got dashboard planners for better dashboards. An audit back here for Google Analytics. Lots of cool things. These are all things that we've developed for our members. You can have them as well for free as a Toolbox member, but Academy members get them as well. Academy members, as a bonus, also get the Get It Done guide. So you can come through here. We have the Eyes on the Journey report, which we've done workshops on. Hopefully you're already pretty familiar with that. This is a great report for measuring behaviors, by the way. So the Eyes on the Journey, there's specific things like setting up iframes if that's what happens to you need. You have that option as well. So lots of cool things that you have access to, and we're doing more Get It Done guides and more scheduled to be released in 2022. Typically about one a quarter, I think is what we're going to average for that. But they're all back here for Academy members. The other things you have, of course, now you go through the content. Remember, it's not about watching every video or every workshop or every course because we will produce content faster than you can watch it. And you shouldn't have to watch every little thing because maybe not every little thing applies to you. Hence, just-in-time learning. That's the whole point of it. If you're in the cave, you're going to have very different style courses and you're going to watch those differently than you will if you're in the summit when it comes to the measurement journey we talked about earlier. So that's why they're back there like this. Then we have the winner circle. This is for community members, members helping members. So you go back here, people are looking at help. Sometimes people are helping or offering their services that we allow back here. We have different topics that are there broken down so members can help members. And this is because sometimes we don't have all the answers. Imagine that. Somebody admitting they don't have all the answers, but it's true. Somebody will ask us a question about Facebook ads or Google ads or technical SEO stuff. We're not experts in that. We're very good at measuring that, but we're not going to be experts in using those platforms. However, many of our members are. They run agencies. They're really good at this stuff. So they all speak measurement marketing. They all understand this concept of the measurement journey and the measurement framework. And they're using these tools the same way that you would be using these tools as a Measurement Marketing Academy member. So everybody, because they have that shared kind of path and jargon, they communicate differently back here. And so maybe somebody can help you with technical SEO.
questions that you might have for maybe measurement related or maybe not. And others can help you. Maybe you can help them with something that you're special on. Maybe your special skills are using a certain platform and you can help them with that. So that's where this is coming in. Again, members helping members, our way of adding support into the Academy. But it wasn't just the only support option. We want to make sure it wasn't just that. That's why we have Ask an Instructor Support, because we count on the fact that you will have questions. That's a big difference between watching a video on YouTube and actually being able to interact with an instructor. A lot of our members have essentially, they are mentioning instructors by names back and forth now because they built such a tight relationship with the instructors back here. The way that works, the reason that works is because they're coming back here is ask a question. They put in their question, they pop in a description, and they pop in videos and screenshots. And I'll tell you, as a strategist, if you're watching this going, well, how can I use this as a strategist? Imagine being able to send me or any of our instructors a video of your site and saying, hey, here's the user journey. Here's what we're trying to do. This part we kind of know. We weren't quite sure what an ACE goal should be here. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Or having your team, your implementers, send us a video that says, I'm trying to work with Tag Manager. This goal just isn't quite firing the way that I want it to. I'm not quite sure why. I think it's because of this. And then they get a video back from an instructor who says, I took a look at it. Here's what I suggest. Click this box and it'll fix it. Or even from a strategy perspective, one of the instructors saying, listen, we've done this a bunch. Here's what typically with e-commerce stores, here's you might want to look at doing this, this, and this. In your particular situation, because of your tech stack, you might want to try doing this. It is just, I cannot emphasize what a level of support this is. It is the most popular feature we have in the Academy, hopefully for obvious reasons at this point, because it is very much concierge level. It's not email support. I mean, some people will put text messages back and forth, and occasionally that's fine, but it's doing videos and screenshots is what the huge pro tip is. Screenshots and videos, right? Doing those things here, super important, because it's like being able to call one of us over to your workstation and say, can you look at this and kind of give me some advice? That's exactly what we do. So that's all back here as part of the Academy as well. And again, we count on that. That's what separates us out, because let's face it, you can watch this stuff on YouTube videos, clearly. You can find out other information other places. You can go to somebody else's blog post and learn about how to use Google Analytics goals or something like that, or how to set a goal. But what should the goal be, and how do you use it, and how do you tie it into a dashboard, and how do you convince your team to actually start doing it? Like all the other questions that come in that you really need kind of a consultant for, that's essentially what Ask an Instructor becomes. It's like having a consultant on call. Again, answers are not real time. That's not the point of that, but it is answers within hours and not days. So you can get unstuck and on the way. So with that, just kind of reviewing the Academy itself, again, all of the courses you have access to. You have access to Ask Instructor Support. It is unlimited. You have access to the on-demand workshop library. You have access to the Winner Circle community. All of these things, right? The courses, remember, all updates you get access to. Any new courses we create, you get access to. All of that. The Ask Instructor Support, you get access to unlimited questions. Ask as many questions as you want, videos and screenshots, the instructors fire them back to you. If you're a new Academy member, when you're first joining, by the way, just a huge pro tip, send a request to Ask Instructor Support and show them your site and ask them to build you a curriculum. To say, here's what I know, here's what our setup looks like, here's what I'm trying to do, where should I start? They will actually help build you a curriculum within the Academy. Say, oh, well, take this one first, maybe watch this workshop, do these sort of things, then come back and ask the instructors, and they'll help you through stuff. The on-demand workshop library, again, there's hundreds of videos back there at this point. They're our way of helping keep things up to date. So if something major changes with the platform, we're able to create a workshop pretty quickly and then let you all know about that, right? So we'll have the workshops back there. Again, everything is entirely searchable. And then the Winner Circle community. So just having a community of like-minded members that are back there that understand what you're trying to do from a measurement perspective, but they're specialists in other areas as well. So take advantage of that. Everybody helps everybody back there. It's kind of the beauty of being a measurement marketer. So with that, the Academy gives you access to over $15,000 in training and support. Right? There's a lot of value that's back there. Remember, it is just-in-time learning. It is constantly being updated. It is not to go through every, again, question I get is like, how many hours of training? More than you can go through is the answer. It just is. There's so much training support back there and more stuff each and every week that gets added. So that is the Measurement Marketing Academy, so that whatever you need is back there when you need it. That's the point. It's worth well over $15,000 in training and support. Obviously, it's substantially less than that. So we want to invite you. Join the Measurement Marketing Academy today. Get it set up so you can get ready and start hitting 2022 with a plan, with action. Start working on these strategies. The Academy can help you. The instructors will be able to help you out. To learn more about the current offers for the Measurement Marketing Academy, just go to measure.tips/getacademy to find those. So again, measure.tips/getacademy. And with that, we'll go ahead and officially wrap this one up. This has been Strategy Session, the top 10 goals to improve your measurement strategy in 2022. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. And Happy New Year!